our God are timeless. It appears every year in the lectionary, and I think for a preacher it can present a challenge. The story is of such great beauty that it's almost like, what more could be said about it? What more could you say that hasn't been said? I think with something that is so great as the story of the prodigal son, as it is known, is probably it's best not to explain it or analyze it, but rather to approach it with a sense of reverence. And when we look at great art, it's not so much, I think, that we should study it as encounter it. It's meant to change us. So let's try and encounter this story. A man had two sons. The story goes on, we learn some things about this man. I think it's safe to infer that he is a widower, mother, or wife is never mentioned in the story. And he has been successful in life. He has very substantial means, fine home, large land holdings, and many hired servants. One day, the younger of his two sons came to him and said, "Father, I've been thinking. Look around, all this great property and wealth we have. One day, half of it's going to be mine. But I don't want to wait around any longer waiting for you to die. I get to divide it up now and give me what would be my half of the inheritance." Kind of a shocking thing, a hurtful thing to say to his father. Can't you die already? The father, though the way he reacts shows us, as he will be throughout the story, a wise and a loving father. So he doesn't react by making about himself and say, "How could you? All I've done," or he reacts calmly and with love. This young lad, I wonder how old he is. Most people have guessed probably in his late teens by the way he acts, that he's old enough to go off on his own, and but he thinks he knows everything there is. He's gotten to the point in life where he feels physically strong and has all the answers. Maybe about age 19, that would make him a college sophomore. You all know what the word sophomore means? It's made from two Greek words. The first one is sophistry, which means wise. The second word is more, which means foolish. We'll get the English word moral. So a sophomore is a wise fool. And that's where that word comes from. And I think it fits this young man at this point in his life. And we've all been there, haven't we? So the father, surprisingly, says, "Okay, son, I'll divide the inheritance and I'll give you your share now." And that seems, why would he do that? I think that probably the father realizes he's pretty much powerless to change the son at this point. There's little we can do when our children become adults, or think they are adults, and we see them making bad choices, or on self-destructive paths. We can't lock them up. We can't live their life for them. So maybe there wasn't so much else the father could do. My mother told me once that, she said, when your children get old enough, said if you have an older child or an adult child, that's on a self-destructive path, the only thing you can do is tell them that you love them and you believe in them. And I remember that, and I used it often as advice when people would come to me as a pastor and share their worry or anguish over an adult child in trouble, struggling. Nothing you can do except tell them you love them and you believe in them. So the young son, flush with cash, traveled to a far-off country. He left the family, and he was on his own. And we can all see, even at the beginning of the story, how this was going to end up. He gets a really nice place to stay, and he throws parties. And when he's throwing parties and spending a lot of money, he's got a lot of friends. But although he started out thinking he had all the money in the world, it ran out, and the friends were gone. And then with the perfect storm, there was an economic depression came to the land, and there was a famine. And he realized how much he had, how much he had lost. This story is known as the parable of the prodigal son. And the word prodigal doesn't appear in the Bible in the story at all. At some point through the ages, someone titled it The Prodigal Son, and it stuck with it. You know what the word prodigal means? It means wasteful. My mother had another old saying. It was, old too soon, wise too late. And some of you know that one too. So, Jesus, the storyteller, is telling us just how far this young man had sunk. The only way he could find a job to feed himself was to feed pigs. And for a Jew, that was the utter humiliation. Because pigs are unclean. You should have no contact with them at all, and here he was caring for the pigs. But next comes the turning point of the story. It's almost as if a trumpet sounds. It says, he came to himself. Did you catch that line? He came to himself then. He realized, all that he had done. I guess he gained insight. And young people gain insight at a different time. Some people gain it young, and some people don't mature until maybe they're well into their 20s. And then maybe a young person who's really been struggling can blossom. This young man, he came to himself. And that would change everything, because it meant he was ready to change. He said to himself, I will arise. I'll return to my father. Sometimes a person has to lose almost everything in life before they'll change. Almost may become near death. Maybe the father realized, as people in other similar circumstances have found, that the father or we could plead with him, beg him, bargain with him, cover for him, threaten him, but nothing would work until he was ready. And now he was ready. He was going to return home. And the wonderful thing about youth is that there's always the opportunity for a new start. There's a wonderful prayer in our Book of Common Prayer, the prayer for young people, and it says, help young people always remember that failure is not a measure of your worth, but a chance for a new start. once he decided, I'm going back, what seemed impossible now is completely possible because it was an act of his will. And when we want to change, then we can, when we decide, when we're ready. So he is totally humbled. He is kind of broken inside. I've sinned against heaven. I've sinned against my Father. I'm no longer worthy to be called his son. And he returns home. And as Jesus goes on with the story, Father, outside of his house, sees far across the fields a figure, and he realizes who it is. And he runs as fast as he can through the fields, and he reaches his son, and he hugs him, he kisses him. And the boy says, Father, I've sinned against heaven. I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Can I stay here as a hired hand? The father called for his servants and said, bring me my finest robe. Bring me the finest ring, the family legacy that I have. Bring sandals for his feet. He said, prepare for a celebration. Kill the calf that we've been fattening. Invite his friends. We're going to celebrate. And then he goes on to say this. He says, for this my son has returned. You see what he's saying to his son? The son said, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But he said, this my son has returned. He's welcomed him fully, immediately. I don't know if I could have done that. You might say, well, you're going to have to prove it for a while. Have to know you're sincere. Maybe after a time we could think about forgiving you. But of course we know this is a story about divine love, and this is about our Heavenly Father, whose forgiveness is always extravagant, and whose love is always freely given and totally given. So the party gets underway. There's music, there's dancing, there's happy voices. The older son had been out in the field, and he calls one of the servants and says, what is that noise? What's the music and dancing? And the servant says to him, your brother has returned home, and your father is giving a celebration because he was lost and found. He had been thought dead, and he's alive. So the brother said, well, I'm not going in. I'm not joining the party. So the father came out, and the brother was in a rage. He said to him, all these years, I've never wasted your money. Wasted your money on prostitutes. Did you notice in the story, there were no prostitutes mentioned? He's kind of embellishing it, making it up. He said, I've been here working. I haven't caused you any trouble. You've never given me a party for my friends. But when this son of yours comes home, who doesn't deserve it, you do. And first of all, did you notice how every sentence the older brother said started with I? I've never been given. I never let you down. And then he goes on to say something else. He says, when this son of yours returns, this son of yours, you see, he's taking himself out of the family. He's not part of it. This son of yours, And so, the father, how does he react? Well, again, like this father, with tenderness. He says, son, he said, right that we should celebrate because your brother has returned home. Notice what he says. He says, your brother. He's drawn him back into the family. It's the great story of forgiveness and reconciliation. It's putting the father, the family back together. He says, you will always be with me, and I will love you always. But your brother, he was lost and he's found. He was dead, and now he's alive. Come and rejoice with me. And the story ends, but I don't think it really ends. I think Jesus kind of left it open because he doesn't tell us if the brother went and joined the party. So I wonder, did the brother go in finally and embrace his brother and join the celebration? Or did he stay outside and nurse his anger and continue estrangement?